And we are back with 90s Noise, and we've got special guests here today with us from the SPLAT ATTACK podcast. Why don't you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves?
Go ahead, Brett.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Brett. I'm one of the co-hosts of SPLAT ATTACK podcast.
And I am Alex. I am the other half of the co-hosting team for SPLAT ATTACK.
Well, we want to welcome you guys to 90s Noise. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
We're excited. We're going to be talking about Nick at Night in the 90s. But first, why don't you guys tell us where we can find your guys' podcast? Where on Instagram, YouTube, any of those? Go ahead and give us your guys' handles.
Sure. Yeah, we're all over the place. We're on Instagram, where we're most active, which is at SPLAT ATTACK podcast. It is also our handle for our YouTube channel at SPLAT ATTACK podcast as well. We do video versions of our podcasts if anyone wants a little bit extra, something special in addition to just listening to our episodes, which are on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, and basically anywhere else you can find 90s podcasts. We're also on... Oh, go ahead.
We do have a Facebook and a Twitter and a TikTok. We don't really do much on there. We mostly just post our latest episodes, but we are much more active with the community over on Instagram and on YouTube. But if you just want to keep up with some of the things that we're doing on some of your primary socials, you can find us there. Look for SPLAT ATTACK podcast.
Perfect. And how'd you guys get started?
That's a story. Go ahead, Brett.
Oh, well.
Well, you start your half, and then I'll join in with my half.
Yeah. It depends on how back we want to go, because there's even some interactions pre-podcast. Because Alex and I have been getting to know each other here and there through like our art, posting through like some 90s Nick groups on Facebook. And I just remember that I've been having a tough time dealing with, just kind of self-validation, depression when I was posting stuff online, like not really getting the response I thought. And I remember out of all the people, when I was about to leave one of the groups, I remember him just being very supportive and kind and really, really spoke to my heart in terms of like, hey, you do really good art. Don't let all these people who don't see your worth knock you down. And he left an impression on me. And so I carried that feeling with me. And as I just kept kind of churning out art under my previous Brett Wilson art page, which is now Bretropod on Instagram, we got to a point where I was doing a whole bunch of different things during the pandemic. I was doing art. I was like selling merchandise of like posters and stickers and stuff. And I was doing these live streams called Buddy Television, where I just edited a bunch of like 90s Nickelodeon shows together as if there's like a VH tape, and I was providing commentary for people who joined the Instagram lives for them. And they were like themed too, so it was pretty fun. Unfortunately, Instagram had other plans, and due to certain rights and algorithms, they shut me down pretty quick before I can get to 100 episodes. But luckily, we did some... Well, Alex did true 90s Nick exclusive live streams, which were like him getting to know other artists, other people in the community, and some Nick celebrities, and just having interviews with them. And I remember at some point during the pandemic, like around July or August of 2020, he had commissioned me to do a logo for his True 90s Nickelodeon page, and he really, really enjoyed it. And after I delivered it to him, he mentioned that, hey, if you're interested, maybe if you want to do podcasts with me sometime, that'd be cool. And I'm like, well, I'm really busy with all this art stuff I'm doing right now, because I'm literally churning out a new piece every other day. But I will hold on to that until I feel the need to reach out to you again. And lo and behold.
And here's where I'll jump in. Because Brett had been a guest on several other podcasts on several occasions, and he always did a great job. But I was not part of the podcast scene. I wanted to connect with people. And what I really wanted to do was I really wanted to connect with Nickelodeon celebrities, just because it's the pandemic and people can use a good motivator as something fun and positive. So I started reaching out to several of them and asking if they would do an Instagram live, give the fans an opportunity to ask them questions, since what else are we going to do? And thankfully, I had several people who were willing to do so, and my followers really loved the opportunity to get to ask these celebrities questions live, and that was a cool thing to do. And I wanted to build on it more than just the Nickelodeon celebrities, because people like the two of you are all about 90s Nickelodeon and 90s and wanting to reminisce and try to capture this feeling of what it was like to be a kid in the 90s again. And it's more than just the celebrities. I mean, the fans had a big voice in Nickelodeon in the 90s as well. So I started having other podcasters, or not podcasters, but content creators as guests on my exclusives. And Brett was the first one that I had interviewed, who was a content creator. And it was great talking with him. And during these interviews, somebody had told me, "Do you do a podcast?" And I said, no. So it got me really interested in doing that. Brett had already been doing it several times, and that's when I commissioned him to do an art piece, because I was going to start my own. And then whenever I was interviewing him, somebody had asked, when are you going to be on, when's your next podcast? When are you going to show up on another podcast? And he said, I don't know. I was thinking about doing my own. And then I had mentioned, hey, so was I. That's why I commissioned your art. We should do something together. And that's where the conversation started. And then after that, he was slammed. And I said, that's all right. I'm not really prepared anyway. So we tweaked it for a while, and we had decided that on the 30th anniversary of the Nicktoons is the perfect time to start our podcast, since it's going to be all about 90s, mostly 90s Nickelodeon, but still 90s. And this would be a perfect time to start it. So we've been going since August the 11th of
2021.
Mm-hmm.
Hit the ground running and never stopped.
That's right.
That's awesome. I love hearing that. That's great. That's a great story, honestly. That really is.
It's like when chocolate met peanut butter. We just fit so well together. Like we each bring something different and unique, but also complementary to each other's strengths when creating this podcast. So we have a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, do you mind me asking what years were you guys born?
Sure. I was born in 88.
Okay.
85.
All right. So I'm the youngin' here today. I was 91, so
it's all good.
All right. So let's get started. Let's get started with these Nick at Night shows. So which one of you guys wants to start us off? We always have our one of our guests go first.
Well, I am actually going to bring something up real quick,
right.
quite literally on frame, since we're talking Nick at Night. I did manage to find this bad boy.
Oh, nice.
Oh
That's
my
cool.
gosh.
For those of you who are listening and not watching, it is a Nick at Night classic TV trivia game, board game, that I happen to have found at a secondhand store.
Wow.
And every once in a while, I'll take it over to my parents on Sunday nights, and we'll just go through the trivia questions and see if we can figure some. So I'm going to try, if we get talking about a show, I might see if I can ask a trivia question or two related to that show if I happen to see one.
That'd be fun.
Absolutely.
But
we have a hella 90s pop culture trivia game that we usually pull out for a couple questions each round and everything too. So definitely love those trivia games.
Awesome.
Well, since I brought the game up, I guess I'll go ahead and start with the first one. But my number one pick, and it will always be this way, is the Monkees. And now my cat's knocking my game over. Thank you, sweetheart.
Did you say the Monkees?
I did say the Monkees. I loved the Monkees. It did come on Nickelodeon in the 80s. Obviously, it was resyndicated then, and then they moved it over to MTV for a time. And it was on Nick at Night also in the 80s. I was too young to have remembered it then, but there was one time before they started doing the Block Party Summer in the mid 90s, they they did do a version of Block Party Summer, but it was kind of an appetizer. It was a sampler platter where they would have a 2 hour, 3 hour block of different shows that was not normally on their timeline to see what people liked. And whatever got the most response, I guess, from fan mail was the ones that they would pick for the Block Party Summer the next year. And there was one episode of the Monkees that came on because my brother, who is 8 years older than I am, he still had VHS tape recordings from when the Monkees were on MTV in the 80s. And he and I ran that tape out. And then we let our cousin borrow it. We never got it back. So I didn't have a Monkees fix. And I had my dad would go out to garage sales and buy the vinyl albums, and I'd listen to them on my Fisher Price record player. And I loved the Monkees. I thought they were hysterical. And then finally, when it came out on Block Party Summer in the summer of '97, I had to grab every VHS tape that I could find, and every Monday night, it was Monkees Monday, I think, I would record the whole block. And my brother and I would watch those episodes and constantly quote them. And it actually had started whenever I was in Arizona visiting my aunt. So I was hoping that we weren't traveling back on a Monday so I could record the next ones. And thankfully, I didn't miss a single one. And now you can find all of them on YouTube. But it was a great show. I absolutely love that show.
Now, can I ask, because I've never seen that show before, I know, what's it about?
Oh no,
that makes two of us.
Okay,
it's perfectly fine.
April.
So in abbreviated version, the Beatles were super popular, and they wanted to make a TV show about the Beatles, and they had actually started a couple of movies as well, but they became so in demand that they couldn't devote the time to it. So they decided, let's make a fake band in the guise of the Beatles. And we're going to follow these four musicians who they're a bunch of young kids and they're constantly down on their luck. They go do a show but it's silly. It's very silly. They do lots of comical things.
Silly.
Like they would do freeze frame with text across the screen. Like they would draw a picture frame around somebody's face and then have a caption, "This is the face of an idiot," or something like that. There was a lot of speed up and slow down motion. There was episodes where they would see monsters in a castle. There was one where they were being chased by mobsters. It's just goofy. It is sheer goofy. There's nothing like it at the time that this show came out. You can find a few things like it since. If it almost feels like Nick at Night Adult Party Swim.
It really does. Yeah, for sure.
It's not something that even when it came on Nickelodeon at the time, kids didn't really grasp it. This was really something more for teenagers, but it's just silly. It is fun and goofy. They did have a music video about the end of the episode to show off one of their latest songs. They were not a band when they started. They were just actors pretending to be a band, but they learned how to play instruments and became a band. Nice. And for a very brief time, they were outselling the Beatles. But not very long. And in the very first episode, they had a bullseye with the Beatles on it, and they were throwing darts
Forgot
at it.
about that.
So,
yeah, the Monkees is definitely on my list. Also, that I really do remember. I used to have trouble falling asleep at night, and so I'd get up in the middle of the night, and my parents were like, "Let's just watch something to tell you fall asleep," and so it was always Nick at Night. And so the Monkees was a favorite. I always was trying to make sure I was awake still for that. But yeah, but you do know who the Monkees are, right, Ashley?
All four of them? Oh.
do you guys
like what do you mean? Like
their songs? Their actual songs.
Probably their most popular song is "I'm a Believer." If you've seen Shrek,
Yes.
if you've seen Shrek, you've heard their song "I'm a Believer."
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That is where it came from and everything.
Interesting.
And their theme song, the Hey, we're the Monkees. Yes.
That I remember hearing.
That was just classic.
And Ray Stevens did a parody of that song in particular, which I thought was pretty funny.
Cool.
And all four of them made guest appearances on Boy Meets World.
Really?
Ooh.
How did I miss that?
I know.
Well, you didn't know who they were.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
Wasn't one of them on the Brady Bunch too?
Yes, Davy Jones.
Davy
Yeah.
Jones.
Oh.
That I remember because I used to watch Brady Bunch.
Peter Tork was Topanga's first father. His father made her father made an appearance twice in the series, and the second time it was obviously somebody different. The first time it was Peter whenever they were going much more with the hippie route for Topanga when she first was on the show.
Nice.
It all makes sense now.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
Next.
what about you two? I joined in with the Monkees, so that was on my list.
Okay. I guess I can go next. I might as well go out guns blazing with my strongest pick first, the most vivid, I should say, because very much like you, is it April?
Yes.
Yeah. I used to watch Nick at night when I needed to fall asleep after like doing my homework, and it was something for my mom to be all nostalgic about because she grew up with a lot of the shows they had on our programming block. So, oftentimes whenever my dad was busy or already asleep, I would watch these shows with her. And one of the most vivid ones that I remember is I Love Lucy, which aired on there from, I believe, 1992 to 96. No, 94 to 2001. Excuse me. She had various other like spin-off shows like the Lucy Show and the Lucy and Desi Comedy Hour and stuff like that. But I wasn't really interested in that, just like the main Lucy storyline. And I don't really know why it was so captivating to me. Probably because I wasn't used to watching shows in black and white. And I found a lot of the character dynamics between Lucy and Ricky and Ethel and Fred and even little Ricky to an extent very endearing. And just seeing all the different wild scenarios they could get themselves into in such a little space. Like most of it was filmed in this main living room of an apartment, sometimes the kitchen, sometimes the bed, but that was it until they started to expand out to other locations later in the series. And I really enjoyed the charm and the comedy and the just the love that they poured into the show because Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball were married in real life, and Desi owned Desi Lou Productions and was kind of running the show with his crew on it. So it was a lot of direct involvement with it, and so many scenarios are memorable to me. I mean, there's the chocolate factory one where they're like eating all the chocolates and the conveyor belt runs out of control. There's the one where they go to California. There's like one where Lucy's playing like a saxophone and she's at it as she's auditioning for a part in Ricky's like band at the Coca Cabana or wherever it is. And then I'm trying to think, so many. There's just too many to list that I enjoyed, and we ended up getting like all the seasons on DVD at some point. We watched them all together again, and it's just like comfort food. You can always come back to it no matter what part of your life and still enjoy it as if you're watching it for the first time. So that's why it's my first pick.
I'm going to piggyback on that because that was also one of mine. Because I have very, very distinct memories of checking that out because it came on early on the Nick at Night lineup. So it was...
Yeah, it was like 8:30 or 9 slot.
Yeah, it was right after Nickelodeon had ended and right before it was time for me to go to bed. So it was a perfect place for me to veg out and start to wind down for the night. But my aunt had actually given me a VHS tape when I was a kid in 97 of a tribute to Lucy, and it was this VHS tribute tape that somebody had made, and it was going through all the different shows that she had done and started showing off some of her movies, like the long trailer, which I ended up finding over at a library and checking it out. But yes, I agree. I had had them on VHS as well, or not VHS, the DVD. And one of the ones that I remember, two I remember the most, was the one where she was reading a murder mystery at night, and she was getting scared, and then there'd be noises that would happen, and she'd freak out, which made Ricky paranoid.
Yeah,
and
she kept throwing the book out the window when she got scared.
And the other one that I remember the most was when she met the Marx Brothers. And it wasn't Groucho, it was Harpo. Harpo, there was a mirror that was in the doorway, and that mirror got taken down, and she was dressed up as him, and they would both come out in synchronization and try to. They know this isn't a reflection, but is it a reflection? That was a classic bit.
Comedy gold. I remember that too.
Absolutely. That was a good one to be able to watch. And like you said, it was earlier on. And so my parents would actually watch that one. And so I just kind of would sit, and I enjoyed it as a kid too. It was a good one to just relax to, not really need to think too much about it or anything, but definitely enjoyable.
Yeah. The comedy was formulaic to a degree, like the whole Lucy, you got some splaining to do, and her crying, but it was still different enough that it kept you invested to seeing what would happen today with something ordinary that would just get totally out of hand.
So according to our Nick at Night trivia game, what was I Love Lucy called before it was called I Love Lucy?
Ooh. That's a toughie.
The original pilot, if there's no guesses, because we'll be here forever, all this guessing. Is there any guesses?
Lucy and Ricky?
Yeah, you close. In theory, the original pilot for the show was called the Lucille Ball Desi Arnaz TV show.
Oh, pretty straightforward and wordy.
Yeah, very wordy. Definitely. I think they did a good thing just cutting it to IRC.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna throw out my show, which was the Brady Bunch. I mean, I think everyone pretty much watched it at some point in their life, even if it was just an episode. I think it was a pretty classic show to watch growing up. I just remember tuning into that one any opportunity that I got, and I felt like it was on for a lot of years. Like I feel like there was never a year when it wasn't airing at some point. It
was on Nick at Night from 95 to 98.
Okay. Yeah. And then I think it came back in the 2000s eventually.
It did.
And ran a long time through there.
And then it was on Nickelodeon also for a short time.
Yeah. I don't really have any particular episodes that I can remember. I mean, I think we all remember Marsha getting her nose hit. That's a classic, and for sure. But I did rewatch one where they lost their dog, which I forgot what their dog's name was. Now that I'm thinking about it, I don't know. And it's funny thinking about back in the 70s when it was shot and everything, and they're doing like lost dog posters or whatever, and like, oh, what kind of reward money can we give? And it was some tiny amount, and they're like, oh wow, and then someone was like, oh, let me add a couple more bucks, and like, oh no, that's too much. And I'm like, but it's your family dog, and like whatever you can give to get them back. It was just hysterical where it was like, oh, $25, wow, that's way too much. And I'm like, that's nothing nowadays.
I'm wondering how the inflation calculates between then and now. Hundreds.
That would be. Brady Bunch was definitely a classic. I love that, and I don't know about you guys, but I also got very into the Brady Bunch movies that came out.
I was gonna ask if you had seen that.
Those were almost better than the show.
And the incredible likeness that they got for Marsha.
Yeah, that was Christine Taylor from Hey Dude.
Yep.
Yeah. And it was just like, as a kid, I didn't know any better. I was like, oh, that's actually Marsha. And my parents are like, no, honey, that came out more recent. She's an adult now. And I'm like, what are you talking about? That's her. And,
Yeah.
but those were a fun add-on to try to bring in a new group to the bunch.
Yeah, I like that
Yeah.
they kind of kept it going. They kept it going through the 90s so that a new sort of generation could appreciate it. And I don't know, it was very cheesy, and a lot of it doesn't really hold up still today, but it was one of those shows where you can just sort of forget everything. And I mean, I think most of the Nick at Night shows were like that, though, where you can just sit back and enjoy it, laugh along with them, have fun. Nothing was really taken too seriously, and you really just can't go wrong putting any of these shows on at any one time.
Yeah, you can say that about the bumpers too. I mean, they have a lot of
Yep.
similar charm as the Nickelodeon
yes.
bumpers themselves, like the ones behind us. Like they'd have little jingles, little characters around.
Those
like,
are the best
I'm totally
part.
into this. Yeah.
The one episode outside of the one with David Jones, because that's the one I remember the most.
Mhm.
But I also remember the one where they went to Hawaii or someplace like that.
Yes.
And
Oh.
That's a good
Vincent
deal.
Price was in the episode and had kidnapped the Brady boys.
Yeah.
But I also had learned, I had no memory of it, but I did learn in the 80s, Nickelodeon did air the Brady Kids, which was an animated TV show, which I had
What?
no idea even existed.
Really?
And what was it that Jan Brady never liked to be seen wearing on the Brady Bunch?
Her glasses?
Her glasses.
Nice.
Oh.
Nice job, Ashley.
Who's keeping score?
All right. So everybody's kind of named one. I've loved all of the ones that have already been named, but one that sticks to me, and it's even a soft spot because I can actually get to meet one of the cast members this weekend.
Oh.
Happy Days.
Yes,
yes.
That was going to
love
be
it.
my one if somebody didn't say it.
That was on my
Yes.
list too.
Who did you meet?
Yes. So Orlando has what's called MegaCon, the convention, and Henry Winkler is going to be there.
Oh,
Wow.
yes.
So
Wow.
he is like at the top of my list. And because that one was just watching him and Ron Howard, just it was classic, and I still remember the different scenes, like them being in the little restaurant and how they shot it, and him coming in, hey, and I just when I remember when I first watched the movie Waterboy,
Yes.
my
Yep.
first
One of my
reaction was,
favorites.
that's the Fonz. And my mom kind of looked at me like, you know who the Fonz is? I was like, yeah, I may be watching that when I'm supposed to be in bed, but yes, I do. But I absolutely love that show, and it's just the family aspect's fun, nice, but also having the non-family members as a family too, and I just love that. And I'm a sucker for those outfits and everything, and it kind of always gives me Grease vibes too.
Yes.
And so that was always something that I really enjoyed, and that's why it's always been one of my top ones.
Catchy theme songs too.
Yeah.
Yes,
Both of them.
I still sing it.
I remember, because Brett was just talking about the bumpers. I remember there was a series of bumpers where they would pick an item from a TV show, and then they would say, this was part of our television heritage.
Mhm.
And I don't remember what all of them were, but I remembered that the Fonz's jacket. I was thinking, you've got to pull something from this show. Like, it really mattered to me that Nick at Night considered these things as part of television legacy. And this was the only time when they finally submitted it into part of their television history, but they had actually said Fonzie's jacket almost wasn't part of our television history, but they had relented and said, therefore we submit it into part of our television heritage. But I loved that one. That was the series that gave us the phrase "jump the shark."
Yeah.
For better or worse. But as a kid, I remember seeing that legendary, infamous scene, and that scared the fire out of me. I was really genuinely worried for Fonzie jumping over the shark, and I was jumping on my brother's bed in excitement when he finally did land over the other side, and my brother was just going, "You're an idiot." I'm like, "What?
It's cool."
He jumped a shark, man. It's cool. And then I found out as an adult, like, yeah, this was really stupid. This was a pure attempt just to keep the show going. I don't care. It was cool.
At least it put a term on the map.
That's right.
It did for sure. And another little side note on Henry Winkler. I don't know if you guys follow much sports and everything, but he had been at the Kansas City Chiefs first, I think it was the 49ers game this past year, and he was wearing a Chiefs jersey. I'm originally from Kansas, and so it was like, okay, you got it. I think Mahomes had given him a jersey and everything, and so he was wearing it. So
very cool.
But I was like, all right, I can dig that even more, definitely.
Well, I've got a story about Richard Cunningham when we come back in part 2.
All right, we'll jump into that one and see you in a minute.
Good.
Got it. Sunday, Monday, happy days. Tuesday, Wednesday, happy days. Sorry.
Happy days. It's funny because we actually did a retrospective on David the Gnome back in August on our podcast, and we made the connection to Tom Bosley as the voice of David the Gnome, and we did a parody of Happy Days theme song called Gnomey Days.
Yes.
It's infinitely linked with that song now since we did that.
My family had gone to a missions trip in Russia, I believe is where it was, and they got on a bus, and the head pastor at the time got on a public bus to go from one place to the next. Obviously, it's what you use a bus for. And Ron Howard, who played Richard Cunningham, came on the bus. They were filming Da Vinci Code at the time, and he came over, and he had full beard and a baseball cap, and like he usually does, and sat down right next to my head pastor. And everyone on the bus who was on the missions trip is freaking out that this is Ron Howard. My pastor had no clue who it was. He grew up watching Andy Griffith, and of course Ron Howard was Opie on Andy Griffith. Had no clue, and he was just having a conversation with him on the bus. "Oh, what brings you to Russia?" And they were and he was, "Oh yeah, work. Oh yes, well." They just had a nice, friendly conversation, and he didn't say anything about who he was. And then once they got off the bus, my aunt and along with everyone else, "Mr. Howard, can we take your picture, please?" And he was very happy. He's like, "Oh yeah, sure." So he got a picture with the whole missions team, and then my senior pastor was going, why does everyone want your picture?" And then they said, "That's Ron Howard." "No, Opie?" And then he smiled, and he goes, "Oh my gosh, Opie!" He didn't recognize it was him until he smiled. But that was a really cool moment. And going back to Fonzie, I dressed up as Fonzie one day for school. It wasn't anything special. There was no special day. It wasn't Halloween or anything. I just loved the character Fonzie, and I had an artificial leather jacket in my closet that was almost too small for me, but I could wear it. I smuggled it into my backpack, and I grabbed 7 combs and put them in my back pocket, because there was one gag where he pulls out his combs or out of his jacket pocket, and he goes, "All right, here we go. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, where's Thursday? Today's Thursday." Pulls another one out. "Hello, Thursday," and puts it back in his pocket. And I went around school like that all day. And from the rest of the year, everybody called me Fonz.
Nice.
Oh man,
One way to make an impression.
Yeah, absolutely. Now going back to that story, I bet honestly, like Ron Howard probably just enjoyed chatting with somebody, not
Very
it
much.
being too much and everything. But like every time I've seen anything about him, it's always good things.
Yep.
And he's definitely somebody that would love to meet one day. If he's ever at a convention in the area of Florida, Ashley, don't kill me, but I'll probably be going. She's already yelled at me about the list for MegaCon this weekend. So
Speaking of, on Happy Days, what was Fonzie's first name? The only Mrs. C seemed to use.
Arthur.
yes.
Arthur Fonzarelli.
I love the name Fonzarelli. Like it sounds like an Italian dish.
It does. It does.
It sounds like the sound he makes when he comes back his slick hair.
Yes.
Over at Disney World, they have a retro themed 50s dining restaurant and everything. And I'm really surprised they don't have a dish called Arthur Fonzarelli, and it's like pasta or something.
Get on it, Disney.
Yeah, they can't because it's not a Disney property, right? It's not
true.
gone to a Disney property yet. No, please, no.
With the way Disney eats up different properties, it's probably going to end up owning Nickelodeon eventually too.
Yeah.
Please, no. No. It's bad enough that there's so many things that they're trying to like revive everything. I don't know if you get side note, and then we'll get back to the shows.
It's okay.
But we were doing a collab with 80s podcast, and we were going through like 80s movies to possibly talk about. And I just pulled up because I couldn't remember when the Goonies had been released, because I was like, was that in 80s or was that before? They're coming out with the Goonies too.
Yeah, they've been working on that for years.
It's posted on IMDb for 2027.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, no.
I mean, ever since 99, they've been trying to work on Goonies too, and nothing's really come from it yet. So I'll believe it when we have something.
Right.
Something real.
IMDb is usually pretty good at not posting anything false. They have Sean Astin and Corey Feldman listed.
Well, I'll reserve judgment till we see it.
Exactly.
Because it can be good. It will most likely not be, but it could be good.
Yeah. All right. What we got for another TV show for everybody?
Who's up next?
Alex, do you got any others?
I do. I had actually come across The Honeymooners.
Ah, yes.
Oh.
I adore The Honeymooners. That came out on Nick at Night from 95 to 2002. And my first experience with that was from Back to the Future, because that was what Lorraine's father was watching, and also what George was watching, and gave that that ridiculous laugh that he does.
Yes.
But my mom and dad had told me, because we would watch Nick at Night, and like I said, we watched I Love Lucy, and I wasn't much into Bewitched, and I wasn't much into I Dream of Jeannie. They were on, but I didn't really pay much attention to them. But I would watch some others with my dad. But the I Love Lucy, we all watched together. And then The Honeymooners came on, and my parents said, you need to watch this one with us because you'll enjoy this. So we watched a couple of episodes, and I cackled. And that's when I realized that Looney Tunes, some of the really older ones that's not Bugs Bunny, but some of the more just like one-note characters that you would get on occasion, usually the mice were designed after Ralph Cramden and his wife, and because he would always Alice, and he would always do that bang zoom. He would get annoyed and would pretend to hit his hands, bang, zoom, and then Art Carney's character would come in and he would be this tall, lanky doofus, and Ralph Cramden was this portly little fella, and it was so funny. It is classic, iconic show. And then I found out that the library had them on VHS, so we had to check all those out.
Nice.
And
Yes.
they did do a Honeymooners movie in the 2010s, and it's hot
Yeah.
garbage. It's not no, just no.
Just no.
But Ralph and Ed were the best, and for anyone who's not seen this, it is just a married couple constantly arguing and bickering. Ralph is a bus driver, Alice is a stay-at-home wife, and his buddy Ed and his wife, they live in the same apartment complex. So they're like 2 or 3 stories down there in New York City, and it's just Ralph is always he wants to be a businessman, get things going quick, and his temper gets the best of him. And Alice has it. She will do that stone face. She'll get annoyed with him, sit down at the dinner table, and then just stare in the distance. And Ralph can't stand it, and he wants to get into it so bad, but he caves at every single time. And I forgot what it is. Baby, I love you, or something like that. Baby, you're the best.
Maybe you're the greatest.
Yeah. Great series. If you enjoy I Love Lucy and you've not seen The Honeymooners, check out The Honeymooners.
Yeah, they do have parallels to them.
Very much.
I'll check it out.
That was an excellent pick, and I forgot that was on Nick at Night. I was like wondering, where did I find this? Because my mom got the original classic 39 episodes DVDs in the early 2000s, and we just wore them out until they were scratched by our DVD player. We loved them as much as I Love Lucy. The whole physical comedy, the gimmicks, the fact that they would also do crazy things like try and figure out how to learn to golf for a business meeting and just be really bad at it, or learn how to do the rumba or something, or have their apartment get furnished by a department store as an advertisement. But Ralph messed it up because he thought that the department store guy was like hitting on Alice. So a lot of cockamamie scenarios really lend itself to the over the top comedy with characters.
And there was I don't remember which one it was now, but I'm fairly certain the actress who played Alice did an autobiography of doing her time on The Honeymooners.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, great show.
I also want to mention real quick before we close up on Honeymooners is that for anyone who's a Flintstones fans, you may have seen some similarities with Fred and Barney Flintstone with their characters and
absolutely
the way they talk, as well as Yogi Bear
really?
too, because he's got the classic tie that Ed Norton would wear, or the vest.
Huh.
This was Flintstones was very much inspired by The Honeymooners.
Oh, I like that. Nice.
Absolutely.
Yeah, good callback. I forgot about that.
Yeah. Well, I guess I will go next since you already talked about one that I enjoyed. So many good ones on my list, but I'm gonna have to get a little bit spooky for a second.
Oh, I know what this one
I
is.
also watch this one a lot. Do you? I mean, it's a 50-50 shot.
I think I know. Go for it.
My next pick is called The Munsters.
Yes.
And yeah, I'm a big Herman Munster fan. I loved all the craziness that happened in that house and how Marilyn was like the Lisa Simpson of the family who just tried to live a normal life and pretend that everything was fine around her when, you know, she would bring a boy back home and their hair would like stand on edge or they'd run through the walls. And, of course, you have the main cast of characters in the family all playing their parts. You got Grandpa, who's like Dracula. You've got Butch Patrick, who plays Eddie Munster, who's kind of like a werewolf kid. Lily, who's also kind of a vampire. Herman Munster, who's like a Frankenstein character. And then Spot, who's the dragon that lives under the stairs. And I used to be scared of that. Like, oh, I better not go down the stairs in my house or else the dragon will pop up and shoot fire at me. Yeah, it's just a fun time. And it's one of those shows that I also didn't really like understand why it was in black and white, but having some experience watching certain shows that transitioned over to Technicolor in the 50s and 60s. I actually prefer shows in black and white that originally aired in black and white because it still has that charm to it versus like painted in pastel colors. And that one of the episodes I remember the most is like Herman's Hot Rod, when he builds the hot rod type car and he does a test drive, and they do this like all fast motion sped up footage where he's driving all around the neighborhood and it gets out of control, crashes. And also the one where they went to the costume party where Herman was dressed up in like a suit of armor so that no one can see him, but he was like this big hulking guy, and people were wondering who was underneath that helmet. And then when he finally lifted it up, like there was this guy who was dressed as like some sort of revolutionary person with like powdered wig and everything, and it just like flew straight off his head into a punch bowl, and everyone just scattered. So it's like really comedic, cartoonish moments like that kept me coming back for more, and they're just very unique characters with a lot of charm.
So why did the rest of the family feel sorry for the pretty cousin Marilyn?
Ooh, that's tricky. Maybe because she wanted to be like them.
They thought she was strange looking.
Well, yeah, along those lines.
If any of you listeners or viewers don't know, Marilyn was the pretty one of the show, and she was within the family, so all of them looked like monsters, and she just looked like a regular person, and they felt sorry for her because they looked strange to them.
Beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I got to see the vehicle that you were talking about that they made. That was part of the inspiration for the Dracula song. And I actually got to see that. There was a Star Cars museum over in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and they had that in there along with a mannequin of Herman Munster, and I think they also had the jacket that he wore along with it. I remember the episode where they had made he got a career as a singer, and everyone Herman got a career as a singer, and he started getting a little too pompous for his own good, and Grandpa made muffins that messed with his voice, and then he got really like Are You Afraid of the Dark with sound like a chipmunk. It goes really high pitch, and he's like, my voice, my golden throat.
Yes, I remember that episode. Yes, yeah, that was one that I think at least when I was watching, it would be kind of towards the end of my being awake and everything. And so I always would be like, do I want to watch this right before I'm about to pass out? Like, is it gonna give me nightmares? Like, I mean, I know it wasn't like scary or anything, especially looking back at it now. But again, as a child, watching those, and the black and white added some like more horror to it, because kind of just made it even more spooky to me. I don't know if it was because it felt more like the original horror movies and everything, but that was definitely a memorable one for sure.
Indeed. And that's also a Nick at Night show with 2 theme songs as well.
Yes. Yes.
They had the Munsters Go Home movie that came out, made for TV movie, and of course they had the new one that just came out not too terribly long ago that is very divisive, but I did enjoy. I loved the Munsters, still do. That was the show that my dad and I would watch, and he would record them the night before, and then I would snuggle with him before I'd go to bed. He'd get in bed, and he had a small TV in front of his, and I'd snuggle up against him, and he'd just wrap his arms around me, and we'd watch the Munsters, and then I'd go to bed.
Very nice.
That's
I watched it
nice
with my mom a lot.
Yeah, I think that's what made the Nick at Night shows so much more special to kids growing up in the 90s, is that we were able to share them with our parents because they grew up on most of these shows. So it was nice for them to get to share that with their kids. And, you know, we got to see these shows kind of have like a new life brought to them because most of them were black and white. And, you know, we just weren't used to that as kids. Like, we watched everything in color. So it was nice to be able to watch all these and appreciate those and kind of give them new life and meaning, and just being able to share that with with our family. I think that's what made Nick at Night so unique, and I think that's why it stuck around for so long. Unfortunately, now, I mean, they're just playing Friends, so it kind of sucks that it's gone in that direction, but we got the good end of it with our
Thank goodness.
Yeah, it's interesting how now we are sharing Nickelodeon with our kids, and they're able to get some appreciation for it. Now I feel like my father snuggling with my kids watching these old Nickelodeon stuff, and to be able to share those moments with him whenever I was a kid, and then him reminiscing about shows he loved. It's just cool. Time is cool sometimes.
Yeah, it really is.
For sure. Ashley, do you got another one?
Yeah, so I mean, speaking about everyone watching something with their family, my mom introduced me to Three's Company. That was one of her favorite shows growing up. So I got to enjoy watching that one with her, and I still love watching that show today. It is so hysterical, and I think that's also something that Nick at Night shows really brought, was that most of those shows were very like physical comedy. Like there's not really a lot of shows nowadays that do that and do it well. Like John Ritter and Three's Company he was amazing and one of a kind. And I just don't feel like there are any actors or any really good shows that are doing it still the way that they did it with that. And I honestly love that show so much. It's one of my top favorite shows for sure.
Yeah, making a connection to Andy Griffith. Don Knotts, I believe, was the landlord on there. He was a character. Yeah.
Nope, that's unrelated. I mean, it was a Three's Company question, but it was one of those Three Company, and then this character went on to do something else. Nope. All right. If I don't find something, It's all right. I'm just keeping an eye out. I do remember Three's Company coming out on TBS before it came over to Nick at Night.
Yeah, it was. I don't think it came in on Nick at Night until early 2000s. So that's
all right.
Kind of late into it.
You might be the one to answer this one because I don't know the answer to this one at all. On Three's Company, Jack was a chef and Janet worked for a florist shop. What did Chrissy do to earn her daily bread?
That's a great question. What did she do?
She was a typist.
Typist.
I was going to say, wasn't she around the house a lot?
She was. That's not like, what did she do?
Unemployed superstar.
Wow. Good show. Now, mine's going to kind of not be super old, this last one that I've got, but The Wonder Years.
Ooh, yeah.
Yes.
That was actually one that while we watched pretty much I watched most of the ones we've already discussed with either my mom or my dad. My dad liked Happy Days, so that was part of that one. But The Wonder Years I actually watched with my brothers. Like that would be when my brothers would be awake also, and they're like, oh, Wonder Years are on, come on, let's watch it. Because being the youngest of three, I never got to pick what we watched. And so but I enjoyed that, and just being able to kind of it was fun, and again, family oriented. And Fred Savage, especially, like having seen him in Princess Bride, and then into Wonder Years, and now like does more behind the camera stuff. He's, I believe, a director more full time now. And then, I mean, that Savage family is just savage.
Very talented.
They're incredible, but I just like it's funny because I don't even really remember specific episodes. I just remember kind of like Fred's character like being outside in front of his garage, and like just the zooming into him and everything, and it was just a good show. I did thoroughly enjoy that one.
Very good pick. for some reason, when I used to watch Wonder Years with my sister, I always got a sense that it had like a similar sensibility to Pete and Pete, just kind of more
Yes.
subdued.
Yeah.
Like it had the
Yeah.
suburban lifestyle thing. It had life lessons. You had all these interesting characters who would come in to, kind of be the catalyst for the scenario of the episode. And I appreciate that. It's nice to relate to people on TV growing up in a similar situation.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Do you
absolutely.
do you all remember who did the voiceover? Who was the narrator?
Ah, that's a good
No.
question.
Oh my gosh.
I know the sound. I could hear his voice in my head.
I can't too.
That is Daniel Stern
Ah, wow.
Okay.
Of Home Alone fame.
of Home Alone. Yep.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember the episodes. There's like 4 episodes I remember really well. One was when they had the eclipse, and I think they were messing with the teacher because he hated the sound of ripping paper out of the notebook, and they all ended up doing it. I remember the dentist episode, and he was really infatuated with the assistant. I remember the Christmas episode where the gym teacher was also a mall Santa. And he always was rough and tough at school, but then they actually saw the side to him that they never saw before. And I also remember when he was learning piano, and his brother kept messing with him while he was trying to learn to play the piano. And also when his brother threw a big birthday or a big party at the house while the mom and dad were gone, and then they had to clean the house as quickly as they could before they came back.
That's classic.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Couple episodes that come to mind for me, just 2 of them off the top of my head, are the one where they have the band and they're like trying to name it, and they come up with the Electric Shoes as one of them. And then the
Forgot
one
about
where,
that.
yeah, it's very silly. They're trying to like come up with a song, but they just can't quite do it. It reminds me of Hard Day's Pete from Pete and Pete. The other one is the one where Kevin builds a treehouse with his dad, because I had a similar situation growing up where my dad was like resisting. He had better things to do, but I wanted the family bonding time with him. So unfortunately, I didn't get that growing up, but I got it through the show because I got to see what they went through to build the little treehouse, and it was very charming.
Yeah. All right. Do we have any honorable mentions or anything?
Go for it.
Go for it.
This one actually leads to Nickelodeon show because they share a voice actor, and if Alex knows what I'm talking about, it seems to like hover around me from time to time. It's the first Nick at Night show I ever recall watching ever, and this was like when I was around 2 or 3. I just happened to see it on TV. And I was really fascinated by this guy who would like go underground to go through different doors to get to a phone booth and then go down into it. And it just really got me interested in like spy type movies like Austin Powers or even James Bond or Mission Impossible to extent. And of course you got the catchy music, and you got the ridiculousness of chaos with their villains and talking on the shoe phone. And of course I'm talking about Get Smart with Don Adams as Agent 99, I believe.
No,
Red
he
numbers.
Agent 99 was the girl. I think it was like Agent 87 or something like that.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, I really loved that show growing up, and I got introduced to Inspector Gadget as a result because they had similar voice actors for the main characters.
Really? Wow. Yeah, I don't know if I ever watched Get Smart.
Yeah, it was written by Mel Brooks. So a lot of the comedy that you'd get from like Spaceballs and Blazing Saddles and things like that, imagine that in a spy setting.
Nice.
That's what you got. Yeah, that was one of my honorable mentions too, Brett. Imagine that.
Wow.
Brett knows I'm a huge James Bond fan, so I'm sure he knew Get Smart was popping up somewhere. An honorable mention for me was going to be that one, but I also was terrified with, but also extremely intrigued with Alfred Hitchcock Presents.
Yes. I had a hard time watching that at 3 a.m.
Yeah, that's very true. Very true. I still sometimes have a hard time watching that one.
Yeah.
The thing is, I don't necessarily find it scarier than Twilight Zone, which is another show I'd watch a lot with my parents. but just the way the atmosphere is with the whole thriller aspect and who's the killer or what happened here that caused these people to vanish. It's like, it leaves you with a different kind of horror after you're done watching, especially late at night when you have to go to bed and you're wondering, oh, is this going to happen to me while I sleep? I hope not.
Yeah.
And my last honorable mention is The Odd Couple.
Felix and Oscar.
I remember watching that one a lot with my family, and then my family went out and got the movie. They rented it from the library and watched the original with Walter Matthau, and it was great. And then I got into doing theater, and my wife and I went to the library. We found they had the script, so we checked out the script, and then we ended up acting it out in our living room.
Nice.
Oh my
Very
gosh.
fun.
Nice. I do love that you keep mentioning, because I'm glad I'm not the only one like going to the library and renting things.
Yes, I forgot about that.
Honestly miss that. Like that used to be, especially during the summer, that was a huge thing, because our public library was right next to the public swimming pool. And so it was go to the pool in the morning for swim lessons, then go kill some time at the public library, and then just go on with the rest of our day. But I always would rent, like I always was a big like William Shakespeare person, so I would always rent like those movies and adaptations, or even like the big like full works of William Shakespeare book. And so but I miss doing that with the library. I don't really know of very many libraries around anymore.
No.
So
it's a lost art of going to the library and just getting lost in a book.
Yeah.
yes.
Well, thankfully, ours here had a huge expansion. So the one here in little old Henderson, Kentucky, is doing very, very well, and my boys go there frequently.
Oh,
so
awesome.
the tradition that we carry on in our family, thankfully.
That's cool. I love that.
That's wonderful. Now I'm gonna have to see if there's one around here to try to check out.
Yeah,
Like,
that's what helps keep them alive, is people keep going to them.
Yeah.
See if there's any Nick at Night DVDs there.
Oh man,
Yes,
I kind of want to go. I need to go.
I will have to say one of my honorable mentions is The Partridge Family.
That was one of mine too.
That was I'm a big like musical person and everything, and so that just helped add to it. And I remember watching that with my mom, because she was like, oh, I grew up with this and everything. And she would just talk about how she absolutely loved it. And so what was it? David Cassidy, right? That was his.
Which one was he?
He was
no, that's
no, he was Keith. He was Keith. He was the oldest brother. And
David Cassidy, you're right.
Yeah. And so my mom was always just like, because she would be like, oh, he's one that I had picture, like the posters of him on my wall as a child and everything. And just kind of reminiscing on that. And so that was always a fun one to watch with her, especially.
Somebody froze.
Oh no, Brett. Brett!
I don't know if he's lost in thought, maybe. Nope.
Oh.
That happens to him quite often. He gets lost in thought frequently. His connection over there is not the best, unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, it happens with everyone, but you guys actually sounded pretty good. So
yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
He'll be right back.
Yeah.
After these messages.
We'll do a little bumper.
We'll be right back. Thank you both for having us on this evening. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
We've really enjoyed this, and definitely we may have to do a part 2 later on.
Yes, absolutely. And apologies because I got cast in a play very, very suddenly, which was why we had
Congratulations.
to. Well, the lead actor for their show had to leave,
Oh
and
no.
I'm very, very quick with memorization, so they called me up. So, can you please do this? I'm like, okay, crap. And then now it was busy trying to get everything together, which was why we had to reschedule. So, apologies for all of that.
No, absolutely.
No apology
Yeah.
needed. That's
Welcome back.
Thank you.
It's
Sorry,
welcome.
internet issues.
It's okay.
okay.
Did I miss
It's all
anything
good.
important?
Just me talking about myself like usual.
I'm used to that. I was actually going to mention, do you have any favorite songs from Partridge Family? Because I know that that theme song is a real catchy one.
Oh gosh, not off the top of my head. Like I can remember like scenes, like just seeing like the them in the bus and everything, the traveling scenes especially. But I can't pull a song from there. It's been long enough since I have actually truly sat down and watched it. But I did always I don't know if you guys ever watched like the VH1, like I love the 90s and
Yep.
everything,
Oh yeah.
that
Yep.
Danny always was doing and stuff. And so he'd
Mhm.
always say something about his time on the Partridge Family. They'd always also throw in like a little spiel like for him and everything. But now what was one of your favorite songs from that?
I don't remember other than the song.
Yeah, other than the main
So
theme,
hoping
that's
to
all I
play-
got.
You're hoping to play off of me.
It's been so long. Like I haven't watched it since Nick at Night, and I don't recall ever
Mhm.
being able to find the DVDs for them. But I do have like general sentiments about it, like just seeing the band play together, having that manager guy there with their mom, um, Danny Bonaducci causing mischief. That's really all I can recall. But I enjoyed the show, so
Absolutely.
yeah.
Well, I just want to say you guys have really great like memories because April knows I have a hard time remembering a lot of things, and I am just boggled by the fact that I haven't really watched a lot of these shows. So I don't know what I was watching. I'm very curious. I'm like, Mom, Dad, what was I watching? Because I must have watched something, but it wasn't any of these shows.
Aw.
So it was very interesting hearing your takes on all these shows, and honestly it makes me want to go and check some of them out. So I do want to thank you for that and kind of opening my eyes up on these shows, and I'm sure probably a lot more of our listeners are going to be wanting to check out these shows as well.
Mhm.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you again for being here and joining us. We really appreciate it.
It's been so much fun.
And so definitely everybody go check out Splat Attack wherever you listen to your podcast. What days do you guys usually post new episodes?
Wednesdays at 9 a.m. Central Time.
Perfect.
All right.
Oh, and Fridays on Patreon too.
Nice.
All right. Awesome. So definitely check them out. And we want to just again extend a huge thank you to both of you for joining us. And we really enjoyed this for sure.
Yeah,
Our
our
pleasure.
pleasure. Thanks.
All right.
Owe me a Coke.
Pitch Coke, owe me a Coke.
Oh,
Oh.
ah,
Thank you, Brett.
you win. You win.